I'd like to call the August 26, 2024 Housing Authority regular meeting to order. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. As a matter of housekeeping, I'd like to remind commissioners to keep their microphones muted unless they are speaking. The City of Santa Rosa is committed to creating a safe and inclusive environment free from disruption. We will not tolerate any hateful speech or actions, and we are well staffed to monitor that everyone is participating respectfully, or they will be removed. If necessary, we will also immediately end the meeting. Clerk, please explain how public comments will be heard at today's meeting.
At each agenda item, after the item is presented, the chair will ask for Housing Authority Commissioner comments. After the Commissioner comments, the chair will open the item for public comment. When the chair calls for public comments, after each item is presented, please go to the closest public speaking podium in the upper tier of chambers, Once situated at the podium, the clerk will unmute your microphone and permit you to be heard for comment. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker per item and 1 comment per speaker per item. Additionally, there will be a public comment period on non-agenda items. This is the time when any person may address the Housing Authority on matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Housing Authority.
Clerk, have we been notified of any commissioners who have requested to participate remotely? Okay, so I guess in order to do that, we have to have our remote commissioner read a statement. So Commissioner Friedman, if you want to do that now, please.
Thank you. I will attend this meeting remotely under AB 2449, applying the just cause, applying the just cause provision of AB 2449. Due to contagious illness, COVID-19, I will participate with both audio and video turned on throughout the meeting. I'm not accompanied by anyone else.
Thank you. All right, before I ask the clerk to do a roll call for attendance to assist with streaming the meeting and capturing commissioners as they are speaking, I want to continue to remind commissioners to please ask the chair to be recognized before asking a question or making a comment. This will allow time for the cameras to shift to a new speaker. Clerk, please call the roll.
So, Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Friedman?
Here.
Commissioner Owen?
Here.
Commissioner Downey? Here. Commissioner Conte?
Here.
Vice Chair Newton?
Here.
Okay, so let the record reflect that all the commissioners are present.
Thank you. Item 4, election of officers. I'll ask the executive director to provide an overview of the process.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Newton and members of the Housing Authority. A little over a week and a half ago, Chair LaPena resigned from the Housing Authority effective immediately due to relocating out of the area. So with his resignation, we are left with a vacancy of a Housing Authority chair. So what we are going to do today is vote for a new chair and vice chair. The Housing Authority selects their own, unlike a lot of other boards and commissions throughout the city. So what we'll do is go through a nomination process. We'll have commissioners nominate and someone second, and then if that individual accepts the nomination, the clerk will call the vote. Are there any questions before we proceed?
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Do we have any public comment on item 4?
We are now taking public comments on item 4.1. If you wish to make a comment upon this item, please go to the podium up in the upper tier of the chambers. Hello, you may state your name for the record if you so please. You will have 3 minutes to make your comment. Can you see the timer? Get it up, actually.
I'm only going to take a few seconds, so it's cool. Mr. Chair, can I just speak and we'll deal with that later?
Okay, which one is that?
I don't think we currently have a chair, so I don't know that I could make that determination. You know, I'm all about following the rules, Dwayne, so.
Go ahead.
Thank you kindly. My name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. I won't ask for the extra seconds because I know in a time-limited democracy, every second counts. It's very important to you folks. I'm here to say thank you to all of you for volunteering your time to serve on this very important body to try to do your best to help not just the city of Santa Rosa and its corporation, but the residents of the city of Santa Rosa who may be in need of services from the Housing Authority. With that said, I hope in your deliberation to pick the next chair that you will pick someone who will be here for the long haul. In the past, we've had some people who've been on the Housing Authority and what used to be the Redevelopment Agency for many, many years. And I would hope that all of you would be willing to make that type of a commitment so that there be that continuity of care, if you will, for our community to benefit from your expertise as you learn to do more while you're on this body. I'll be talking with you later during public comment. Notice we didn't even get to the 2 mark. Thank you kindly.
Are there any other public comments on item 4?
Were you wanting to make a comment?
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. So, looks like there's no more public comment?
Okay. Okay, would any commissioner like to motion to nominate current members of our board for the offices of chair and vice chair? Commissioner Smith.
I'd like to nominate for chair Jeremy Newton.
I'd like to second that nomination.
Vice Chair Newton, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go ahead and conduct a roll call. Starting with the mover.
I vote for Jeremy.
Okay. And then the and followed by the second, the person who seconded that,
I'll second.
and then Commissioner Owen,
Aye.
Commissioner Friedman,
Aye.
Commissioner Conti,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Newton.
Aye.
Okay.
Do we have Commissioner Downey?
Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Downey. And no, that motion passes with 6 ayes, 5 ayes, excuse me. And X noes with, with 6 ayes.
Would any commissioner like the motion to nominate current members of our board for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Downey for vice chair.
I'll second.
Okay. Commissioner Downey, do you accept? Okay. So we'll go ahead and conduct a roll call, starting with the mover
Aye.
and followed by the second.
Aye.
Remaining. And then Commissioner, I should have this up. And then Commissioner Conti,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Downey, and Vice Chair Newton.
Aye.
Well,
Again.
let the
How much I
record
believe in you.
note
Clerk?
that it passed.
We need to get the vote of Commissioner Friedman.
Aye.
Sorry. Let the motion, or that motion passes with 6 ayes.
Okay, thank you for that. Item 5, statements of abstention. Do any commissioners have any statements of abstention? Okay, item 6, study sessions. There are no study session items on this agenda. Item 7, public comment on non-agenda items. Clerk, do we have any emailed public comments? Actually, I guess we'll start in the room. So if anybody has any public comments on non-agenda items, please go.
Chair Newton, is this on? Chair Newton, I believe I'm the first person who gets to say that to you, and I appreciate it. Congratulations. My name is Gregory Farron, and there are probably a couple of people in this room, including Steve Burke and a few others, who've been appearing before the Housing Authority longer than I have. And I want to remind you, the reason I'm here today is you are partners with the community in building low-income housing. Your items on the agenda are testimony to it. I was on the Burbank board a decade before we bought those properties you're now trying to help rehabilitate. And it's helpful to see you as long-term partners. I appreciate it. I'm here today to ask you to continue that history, that commitment you make, because as you probably know, there's some money coming out from the state as a result of Proposition 1 that's aimed at trying to build housing for veterans. I'm sort of a gadfly cheerleader for Prop 1 in this county, trying to get nonprofits and government interested in partnering in order to be able to bring that money to Sonoma County. But it also takes cities like you. You have an opportunity to embellish and strengthen those applications by what you can contribute to the projects. And in particular, you have some surplus property. You've put it on your website. There's a couple of parcels up on Montecito Avenue that I'm interested in. They're not big parcels. You can't build a lot of housing, but you can build housing. And I've already let the city know that my agency, HEPA, is very interested in those parcels, because with the parcels and other in-kind contributions from other cities and other funds, we can get that Prop 1 money into Sonoma County and build housing for veterans. It's what you've done all along. Long ago, you gave me the city gave me a parcel that was surplus, and I built housing on it. So I know it can be done. We've done it before. You've done it before. So I'm here today just to ask you to continue that history, to make your commitment to the city that surplus property, any monies that the Housing Authority have, should be bundled into those applications as well as you can, so that the applicants, lots of nonprofits who will go after that money, can have the best shot at pulling in that state money. Thank you very much.
Hello,
Ready
you
to
may
roll?
Hello, you may state your name for the record if you so choose. You will have 3 minutes to make your comment. Can you see the timer?
Yes, thank you. Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland, and I'm also a veteran, and I've been a member of the Sonoma County Housing Advocacy Group for close to 30 years. I, too, have been coming to these meetings for close to 30 years. I wanted to talk about something that's been passed by the United States Housing and Urban Development Department, stating that recipients of what are known as HUD-VASH vouchers, Housing and Urban Development, Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Vouchers, Section 8 vouchers, are perhaps in the future not going to have their income from their VA disability counted as part of their income for the housing expenses clarified by a housing authority. That bill, not a bill perhaps, but a regulation coming down from HUD has been circulated to various veterans organizations, and the word is out. We'd like to find out how Santa Rosa is going to be handling HUD-VASH vouchers, because we've been told that they handle it for the entire county, Sonoma County and the city of Santa Rosa. We'd also like to clarify if that also applies for veterans who are receiving Section 8 vouchers but not under HUD-VASH, who are disabled veterans and their income is being counted as part of the income that the city and the counties currently make their adjustments. Then regarding surplus properties with the city of Santa Rosa, over 20 years ago, I was part of a committee called the Southwest Santa Rosa Redevelopment Project Area, and we recommended against destroying houses on Stony Point Road to widen the road. We were ignored by city staff, and 17 housing units were destroyed to widen Stony Point Road. Many of those units housed people who were low income, but not considered that by the city because they weren't being funded by the city. Those parcels along Stony Point Road on the western side near Sebastopol Road are now vacant, owned by the city. Houses were there before. They were torn down to use as a staging area to put in the wider road. Houses should be allowed to go back to those sites, and they should specifically be given some preference to go for veterans housing. We in the community out there are seeking to revitalize the Roseland Veterans of Foreign Wars post that is currently inactive, but bring it back into activity and work together with other organizations such as Nation's Finest, which helps with veterans housing. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments in the room? And, Clerk, are there any email public comments?
No, there weren't.
And Clerk, do we have any public comment via Zoom today?
No.
Thank you. All right, item 8 is draft minutes. We have minutes for the June 17th, 2024 meeting. Are there any changes? Commissioners, any changes to the meeting minutes? If none, the minutes are approved as prepared. Okay, so we have a request for public comment on item 8.1.
The request was made before the approval. My name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. I'm in the minutes that are being referred to today, so I just wanted to clarify under number 7, when I spoke previously, I was pointing out that the federal funds for more downtown activity be in the downtown area specific plan area that encompasses a large portion of Roseland now. That's important because the city reached out and put numerous acres, dozens of acres along Sebastopol Road up to Dutton Avenue into the city's downtown and considered that part of downtown. So that's when I speak about Roseland and downtown together. Go there. Thank you kindly.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments on item 8.1, the minutes? It doesn't sound like we need to change any of the minutes. It just sounded more like a clarification of what was said. So no, I hear you. Just again, for technical purposes, I guess. Are there any other changes or comments on the meeting minutes from the last meeting? Okay, with none other, the minutes are approved. Item 9.1 is a proclamation of appreciation for Tom LaPena. So whereas Tom LaPena was appointed to the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Rosa in August 2021, and whereas during Tom's tenure on the Housing Authority, he contributed to the development, rehabilitation, and conversion of hundreds of affordable housing units, including but not limited to Vigilites, Caritas Homes Phase 1, Burbank Avenue Apartments, Hearn Veterans Village, South Park Commons, Laurel at Perennial Park Phase 2, Parkwood Apartments, Mahonia Glen, Stony Point Flats, and others, and assured their continued affordability for future generations of Santa Rosa residents through ongoing compliance and monitoring. And whereas those projects improved conditions throughout Santa Rosa, addressed the needs of homeless individuals, and provided working families with safe, affordable housing. And whereas during Tom's tenure, the Housing Choice Voucher Program earned the High Performing Agency Award from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, providing ongoing rental assistance to over 2,000 households monthly. And whereas in 2024, Tom served as the chair of the Housing Authority, leading his colleagues through administrative and financial decisions. And whereas the City of Santa Rosa and the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Rosa have greatly benefited from Tom's leadership, insight, and passion. Therefore, be it resolved that Tom is recognized as a consummate professional and will be remembered for the kindness and professionalism that he brought to the City of Santa Rosa. Be it resolved that Thomas LaPena will be greatly missed and is hereby commended for his 3 years of commitment and contributions to the City of Santa Rosa. Jeremy Newton, Chair, Housing Authority. Yeah, just personally, I want to thank Tom for his public service, not only on the Housing Authority, but as a citizen with the manufactured homes and the other work that he's done. He was a mentor to me, and I enjoyed working with him and wish him well in his future endeavors. We're now taking public comments on item 9.1.
So we are now taking public comments on item 9.1. If you wish to make a comment upon this item, please go to one of the podiums in the upper tier of the chambers. It appears that we don't have any public comment on this item.
All right, thank you. Item 10, committee reports. Housing. Do we have any committee reports today? I don't think we have any committees, so no committee reports. Item 11.1, pending development pipeline update.
Thank you, Chair Newton. So attached to the agenda is the monthly pending development update. As you have requested at past meetings, we now have our changes reflected in red, so they're easier to see what has changed month over month. So that is attached for your review. And also, I'd just like to let you know that following a request at a prior meeting, we will be doing a presentation on HUD-VASH vouchers and including the VA at our October meeting. And so during that presentation, we'll also be touching on changes to the VASH regulations.
I appreciate that. That's something I was going to ask about. So October, we'll look forward to that. Thank you. Housing Authority, are there any questions of staff on the pipeline update? Okay, Commissioner Smith.
I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank you for that link you sent to me and Angela on all the housing that we have out there. It was very impressive the way it was set up, and for the future, I think anybody coming onto the board should be sent that link. It's too bad that I didn't get it before just to have it, but I just wanted to say it's very impressive what the city has done, and I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. And then just for the rest of the housing authorities information and members of the public, Commissioner Smith is referring to the affordable housing map and links to our affordable housing inventory. Those are on the city's website on the Housing and Community Services page.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments on the pipeline update? Commissioner Downey.
So the housing needs, the regional housing needs allocation, the RENA, are provided to the city in 7-year increments. And so what's shown on the pipeline, kind of some of those straddle different time periods, and they are counted towards the city's RENA when the building permits are pulled. So it's difficult to look at the pipeline and tell you exactly where they landed. Certainly every affordable housing complex that we are able to construct definitely gets us, moves us closer to addressing the affordable housing needs, but we do have a fairly large number. I believe it's in excess of 5,000 units across the income categories. So that is a fairly lofty goal for us to achieve.
Oh, Commissioner Smith.
Just curious on the section completed within the last 24 months, the number of affordable housing units was not added up at the bottom. Is it the same as the 667 number?
You are correct, that needs to be updated. No, it likely is a little bit less because oftentimes we see some, either a manager's unit if it's a purely affordable complex, or if it is a market rate unit with some set-asides, the number of affordable units will be lower than the total project size. But we will make that correction and update it.
You mind sending out an email or something with that? I was curious about that number myself here in the last 2 years, how many affordable units have gone in. I mean, I guess I could just do the math myself, but I guess if you have an official number, you guys are going to come up with and update the spreadsheet.
We will update this for next month, and then also I'll work on incorporating some agenda materials to touch on how that's addressed the RENA.
Thanks. Okay, Commissioner Smith.
On page 2, awaiting additional funding, on the Ponderosa Village, it says at the end, SB-35 approval. What does that mean?
SB 35 is a Senate bill, Senate Bill 35, that was adopted several years ago. It allows for ministerial approval, so it does not need to go through like design review or additional reviews with the planning department if it meets specific requirements. So that project has met the requirements to receive SB 35 approval, so they've received an approval letter and then can proceed to their building permits.
Any other questions or comments on the pipeline? All right, I guess there any public comment on item 11.1? Greg?
Those of us who are trying to figure out how much affordable units are being done, and especially for the unhoused who are trying to follow along themselves, it's sometimes difficult. So if you can make that a little clearer, both for yourselves and for the community, then we appreciate it.
Hello, you may state your name for the record if you so choose. You will have 3 minutes to make your comment. Can you see the timer?
Yes, thank
Your
you.
time begins now.
My name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. I also would like to thank the staff, especially Ms. Bassinger, making sure that this pipeline is better understood, the document. I also wanted to point out that there are some projects going forward, over half a dozen over in the Roseland area. And one of the concerns that some people have brought up to me, because I follow Roseland issues, is it's hard for veterans to get in to these new units coming up. As a matter of fact, they're being filled almost as soon as they're completed, and they don't know how to access Burbank Housing's project list to get on for Burbank Avenue apartments that are being built right now. Folks missed out on Stony Flats and Dutton Flats and other affordable situations because they didn't understand how to get into that. I guess it's almost a lottery because there's such a desire to get into these newer apartments that are being built. And then with that comment in mind, back here on the next page, you have the awaiting additional funding or permits. And Casa Roseland, being built by Mid-Penn, 75 affordable units. They're at the former Roseland Village Shopping Center. I'm a person who's been following that project since its very inception. I had served on a number of committees and was actually a part of the committee that recommended Mid-Penn be the ones that came forward. Unfortunately, in a sense, we got bamboozled. What happened is we thought something was going to come forward and get moving and be done within 5 to 6 years. That's close to 15 years ago, as what's been going on out there is they have a lot of difficulties, and they were sold a bill of goods by somebody who was working with the original property owner and convinced folks that the toxics had been all cleaned up, and that was not the case. That's unfortunate, but that shouldn't be something that in effect victimizes the entire Roseland community because that project's been languishing. Then they went ahead and they tore down buildings that were a community center, a Rose Bowl, which was a big important thing for Roseland. And so a lot of things have been going on, and I want to make sure that you folks have really strong oversight on this monies that you're going to give to these people. It says here that you'll be getting perhaps 28 units restricted and that it'll be 100% affordable. Please make sure that happens, because I've watched other projects in the past pull a fast one, such as Bellevue Ranch, which was going to have 62 affordable apartment units, and then they put them off onto the taxpayers and never provided them. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any other public comments on item 11.1?
It doesn't appear that we have any more public comments on this item.
All right. Item 12, consent items. There are no consent items on this agenda. Item 13, report items. Megan.
All right, just a moment while the clerk pulls up the presentation. Good afternoon, Chair Newton and members of the Housing Authority. Before you this afternoon is a request from Burbank Housing Corporation and Burbank Neighborhood Revitalization Corporation to request the conditional consolidation of loans on 5 properties. Those are known as Baby Apples, located at 2862, 2866, 2870, and 2874 Apple Valley Lane, Papago Court, Pollen Creek, and Olive Grove Apartments. So Burbank Housing is pursuing a tax credit and bond application to finance the rehabilitation of the 5 project sites, and they are known as the Apple Valley Scattered Sites. The application is due tomorrow, August 27th, 2024, which is why it is before you today, in an effort to request the Housing Authority to review this conditional consolidation of loans. So I'm going to give you some information on each of the 5 projects so that you'll have an understanding of what they entail. The first one is 2862 and 2866 Apple Valley Lane. This was initially acquired by Burbank Housing and rehabilitated in 1997. It's a 4-plex. It consists of 3 affordable units, 1 set aside for the on-site manager, and it's affordable to households at 60% or less of area median income. As of July 31st, and all of these loans are as of July 31st, there was outstanding principal of roughly $454,000, and then accrued interest of $127,161. The next site is 2870 and 2874 Apple Valley Lane. Just like the previous project, it's a 4-plex with 3 affordable units, affordable to 60% of AMI or less. The unpaid principal balance is $453,500, and the accrued interest is $129,954. Papago Court is a larger complex, also acquired and rehabilitated in 1997. It consists of 48 units, 47 of which are affordable to households at 50 and 60% of AMI. The unpaid principal balance on this particular loan, or compilations of loans, is a little over $3.1 million, and the accrued interest is $1.225. Pollen Creek, similar to Papago Court, is a 48-unit complex with 47 affordable units. Again, affordable to households at 50 and 60% of AMI. The compilation of loans has an outstanding principal of $4.2 million and accrued interest in excess of $2 million. All of the 4 projects that we just quickly reviewed are in the same geographic area known as Apple Valley, so on the West Steel Lane, Apple Valley Lane area of Santa Rosa. The 5th and final project that's included in the scattered site project is Olive Grove Apartments. Olive Grove, I'm sorry, and there's a typo, and I apologize for that. Olive Grove was actually constructed in 2007, not 1997. So this is one of the newer complexes in this group. It's located at 1905 Zinfandel Avenue, kind of by Marlowe Road and the Safeway on Marlowe and Guerneville. It's 128 units, 126 that are affordable to 30, 50, and 60% of AMI. The existing loan has a $5.4 million principal balance and accrued interest of a little over $2.4 million. So what Burbank is requesting that the Housing Authority consider is consolidating the principal amounts of all the loans on the 5 properties, which is roughly $13.8 million, and forgiving the accrued interest, which as of July 31st is about $5.9 million. By forgiving the accrued interest, the project is able to leverage additional tax credits and bonds, which we put towards the rehabilitation of all 5 project sites. Along with the consolidation, the loan term would be extended to 2082, and the regulatory agreements would also be extended for a commensurate period. So no additional funding for these sites is being requested from the Housing Authority. The financial request is for the forgiveness of accrued interest in this particular instance. And as noted on this slide, the forgiveness will leverage an additional $3.5 million for the project. So So each of the 5 project sites had either a physical assessment or a property needs assessment where they evaluated the conditions of the units, the various items that need to be repaired. Some are immediate, some are a little bit further out, but overall, all of these sites need work. Those located in the Apple Valley area, the most pressing, and Olive Grove is roughly 20 years old. There's less needs on the site, but there are still some rehabilitation needs that need to be addressed. And the developer is estimating that the total rehabilitation work across the projects would be approximately $22.9 million. As I noted earlier, the timing of this request is critical as the application is due tomorrow. And what's pressing about this is right now, TCAC and SIDLAC have a surplus in tax-exempt bonds and tax credits. We don't know if those same conditions will be in place in 2025. So in terms of having a competitive application, kind of time is of the essence for this particular scattered site project, and would allow, if they are awarded the tax credits and bonds, would allow them to proceed within the next year. We're also not sure going forward what the opportunity for rehabilitation projects will entail. It has been a relatively competitive market for new construction, so rehab projects have not been that successful over the past few years. So as I touched on, the request before you is consolidating the loans into one scattered site loan, entering into new regulatory agreements with the 57-year term, which aligns with the tax credit period and the term of the financing. Ensure that we are making this a competitive application by forgiving the interest, and that number will change when we get to the time of loan consolidation. So it's estimated as of July 31st, but at the time of consolidation, the number will, of course, be higher because the projects will have accrued more interest. This is a conditional approval. If accepted by the Housing Authority, it would only go forward if the tax credits and bonds were awarded for the scattered site project. And that is built into the 5 resolutions that are before you today. And then if the Housing Authority does approve this, the consolidated loan would have the applicable federal rate. So generally, we approve our loans at 3% simple interest. The applicable federal rate currently is at 4.61%. So we don't know what that rate would be at the time of the loan, but the floor would be 3%. So at a minimum, you would receive 3% accrued interest going forward from the date of the new consolidated loan. And that brings me to the recommendation. So it's recommended by the Housing Authority, by Housing and Community Services, that the Housing Authority, through 5 resolutions, conditionally approve a consolidation and extension of the loans for 2862 and 2866 Apple Valley, 2870 and 2874 Apple Valley Lane, Papago Court, Pauling Creek, and Olive Grove, to 1, consolidate the existing loans that are secured against the 5 project sites, 2, forgive the accrued interest on the 5 project sites at the time of loan modification, 3, extend the terms for 57 years at the applicable federal rate with a floor of 3%. 4, extend the term of the regulatory agreements against each project site to June 30, 2082. The 5th component is to assign all the loans to the Apple Valley Olive Grove Limited Partnership, and this would be the limited partnership that holds the scattered site projects. And then 6 is authorize the executive director to enter into any and all agreements to carry out this consolidation. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Megan. Quick point of order before we move on. We skipped over something. I guess we skipped over Chairman Commissioner reports, item 10, of which there are none. This is actually item 14.1, the report items. I think I said 13 earlier, so. First day bugs as the chair. Thank you for that. From the commissioners, are there any questions of staff? Commissioner Smith.
Just 2 questions. So this is conditional, so if they don't get the money, we revert back to as is? Did I understand you correctly?
So this is conditional based on the award of tax credits and bonds. So until an award is made and we move towards consolidating the loans, no action will be taken, and the existing loans will remain in place. And if they aren't awarded the tax credits and bonds, then we would not consolidate the loans, and I would return to the Housing Authority and provide a further report on the status.
And my second question is, why is this happening at the last minute?
So Burbank began this application in summer, and I think that's detailed in the staff report. And as they were working through their application, the forgiveness of interest became a critical component of their underwriting, and that just came to us at the beginning of August.
Commissioner Ward?
Yeah, Megan, what is we have a NOFA out right now?
We had a NOFA that closed at the beginning of August. I want to say it was about $3.5 million with a priority for rehabilitation of units.
And we're being asked to waive $5.9 million right now?
Correct. The request currently has the accrued interest at about $5.9 million. None of these projects are included in the NOFA application, and the proposed rehab value under this this option is about $22.9 million, so greatly in excess of what we have available to offer our project.
So, and how would the $5.9 million under current contracts be paid? When would and under what's in place right now, how would that interest be paid?
The interest, if the Housing Authority was to receive the interest, those are residual cash receipt loans. So if the project is generating income, they pay us a portion of that income on an annual basis, and it's applied first to accrued interest and then second to outstanding principal. These projects, specifically the Baby Apples, Pollen, and Papago, make relatively small residual cash payments, if any, on an annual basis, like a few $1,000s. So the accrued interest and principal likely would not be paid, and if we weren't to take any action, we would end up extending the term of the loan when we approach the 30-year term. A lot of these are older loans that have 30-year terms.
Now, the interest rate that is normally applied to these loans is 3%, but you quoted an index, it's 4.61 at this. Could you explain what that interest rate is?
The applicable federal rate is what's currently being included in the tax credit and bond applications. And certainly I would invite Burbank Housing to provide a little bit more information on why that rate's being used, but it is included in the tax credit and bonds applications.
So one of the offsets is, if I understand correctly or wrong, is waive the 5.9, start the interest again at a higher rate. Is that correct?
If that's the rate at the time of loan consolidation.
Is that a variable rate, or you don't know?
It does change.
So just doing some simple math on it, if you were to take the 5.9, the amount of the debt current now, because we're not changing, there's not an application or any request to change the debt amount. Take the debt amount at 3%, and then take the debt amount at 4.61%. I came up with an annual difference of about $153,000. So you look at that, and how many years does it take to pay back the 5.9 on 53? So we're looking at 40 years. My first question was, what is the NOFA amount that we have of $3 million? So asking for a $5.9 million waiver, regardless of, I know it's residual receipts, I know it's probably not, would be possibly not repaid because of the cash flow of the property. But the request is basically, because that's still accruing, it's going to be more than 5.9. It's basically double what the last NOFA was amount. So what's being requested is a large sum of money that could go into other projects, and we've had speakers today talk about the need for veterans housing and other units that need to come into, that should come into the community.
The amount that's being requested to be waived is roughly double of the existing NOFA, but I'd also like to note that the funds that are in the NOFA, not all of those would be applicable to the proposed work here. So they wouldn't be eligible for that to begin with. And then the other component that we briefly touched on with the residual cash receipts is it's highly unlikely we would see all of that money come back to us that we could turn around and put into more projects, just the way the loans are structured and that the manner in which they're currently cash flowing.
Has there ever been a request of this sort in the past that the Housing Authority has agreed to?
We have not seen a request of this amount. We have forgiven interest on a few other loans over the course of the past few years, much smaller amounts, but this is one approach to help them kind of restructure the debt and address the rehabilitation needs on the sites.
Okay, and again, I understand that the NOFA, I was just using it for dollar sizes because there is a very limited supply of funds that can go toward projects via rehab or new, and $5.9 million, regardless of whether or not it could anticipate it to be repaid. I think it was 2040 is when it matures. It was because it was a 30-year.
There's a variety of loan due dates. Some of them I think were 2048. There were some that were 2028.
Okay. I'm just showing that up as in terms of the magnitude of the request. Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Any other questions from any commissioners?
Commissioner Friedman has a question.
Oh, Commissioner Friedman, go ahead, please.
Commissioner Friedman, you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so it's been 30 years since I was an accountant with Deloitte & Touche, and I'm not that familiar with this particular kind of loan. But it looks to me like it's between 40 and 50% of the outstanding loan principal, that the amount of interest that would be forgiven is about between 40 and 50% of the principal, and I'm wondering what effect will that have on the number of people that we might serve. Would that be, would we be able to serve fewer, greater? Is it a wash? And I don't really understand how we would leverage 3.5 million more. Is that because of the tax credits?
So in response to your question, even if the interest was not forgiven, I don't think it would assist us in serving more people. So the loans are secured against property, and we have units that are affordable to the households as outlined. By this request, we're able to rehabilitate and improve the units that these individuals reside in and future residents. So we are able to preserve more housing stock within the city by reviewing this request. So in my opinion, it's not taking away any future efforts to address Santa Rosa residents.
Thank you. Also, I'm wondering about the definition of extremely low income, very low income, and low income families for, say, one person and 4 people. And along with that, of the 228 units, how many will be allocated to extremely low income, as well as very low income and low income families? If you can give a ballpark idea, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
So to address your question, there are some minor changes to the way the units are allocated, but for the most part, they'll remain roughly the same as is outlined in the PowerPoint presentation. So the majority of the units will go towards households at 50 and 60%. The Olive Grove Apartments does have units at 30% of AMI. And that's 30% is extremely low income.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Smith?
Just to clarify, these units, are they currently being lived in?
The projects are all in service and are occupied. I can't tell you that if each and every unit is currently occupied, but the units are all occupied and in service.
So just curious, what are you renovating, and does anybody have to move out in the short term to renovate the apartment?
I'll defer that question to Burbank Housing when they address the Housing Authority so they can talk about the relocation efforts that they'll need to undergo with the project.
Commissioner Owen?
Just additional questions. The 13 million that we're talking about, that's city debt, is that correct?
The 13,
Housing Authority.
Correct. Those are the principal amounts that are currently secured against the properties.
Is there any other debt on the property, on these properties besides the 13.8 million?
There are first mortgages, and those are outlined in the resolution. So the properties do have first mortgages that are in a senior position, and then Olive Grove Apartments also has a loan from HCD.
And is the 22 million more or less than so is the $22 million just rehab, or is that going to be in addition? Here's where I'm going with the questioning. If the current property cash flow is not throwing off hardly any residuals to pay off the existing, adding more debt can only exacerbate that problem. So is there more debt going on the property that's going to reduce the cash flow? If so, part two are these units being rented out at the maximum allowable rents for the incomes that they're maximized at maximum limits?
So I'll defer to Burbank on the new first mortgages, but I would say that with the rehabilitation, that will allow them to address any rent issues and maximize the fair market rents that they're charging at those sites. So they will be able to hopefully receive more income on those properties.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? I usually have a bunch, but as the chair, I go last, and so I don't have nearly as many. You guys asked some pretty good questions. So we talked about during the NOFA that rehabilitation was going to be a big priority for us this year, and so this kind of fits that mold. I like it. The only issue that I had was the impact on our budget as a housing authority and our ability to fund affordable development and make loans going forward. But what it sounds like, this issue of accrued interest and it being deferred, it sounds to me in my non-banker mind that interest was never going to come back into the housing authority budget anyway from this project. I think you said even at the end of the project or at the end of the loan, we would probably just come back and vote to roll it out another 30 years or something like that. So it's almost notional. Is that right? I mean, it's not cash that's going to come back in at any point.
So to give you an example, the Housing Authority's loan portfolio is currently about $192 million, and our residual cash payments that we receive on an annual basis are about $1.2 million. So it's a very small percentage that we see paid to us on an annual basis.
So there is a residual cash payment per year that comes back into the budget from these projects.
And that's throughout the loan portfolio. So over about 40 plus projects that we monitor.
In the restructuring, would that impact that annual residual cash flow that comes back in, or would it just all come in through this new loan, I guess?
I think we'd probably see less coming in. Well, one, it would come in as a whole through the Apple Valley Scattered Sites project, because that would then be consolidated into one project. Currently, we do see residual cash from Olive Grove, but that's the one out of the 5 that is able to cash flow. So I think it will put the other 4 projects into a better financial position.
Okay. Yeah, so what I'm hearing is this wouldn't have a huge impact on our current budget and our ability to meet our mission of providing affordable housing and vouchers and things like that.
No, and one of the things that, I don't know if this particular housing authority has talked about, we don't generally rely on our residual cash as one of our forms of ongoing subsidy. We look at what's coming in through our various sources, whether it's allocations from HUD or impact fees. So that's more of our bread and butter. And if we do have residual cash, that's great, and that enhances our budget. But we're not relying on that to put together our NOFAs and fund our staff.
Okay. I'm curious to hear either from you or from Burbank during public comment what happens if this doesn't go through, if the rehabilitation takes place, if I guess the NOFA window closed, or I'm just curious what would happen with this project if the loan doesn't go through.
No, I'll defer to Burbank when they speak on how they will address the needs at the various sites.
All right, are there any other questions of staff? Commissioner Smith.
So is Burbank going to give a presentation before we vote?
We have public comments before we vote, correct. They're not going to give a presentation, but they'll provide comments if they're so inclined.
Sounded like they were going to address some of the questions we had. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, there's a contingent of them up there, so.
Any other questions from commissioners of staff? Okay, Clerk, will you facilitate public comment on item 14.1?
We are now taking public comments on item 14.1. If you wish to make a comment upon this item, please go to the podium, one of the podiums in the upper tier. You may state your name for the record if you choose, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Good afternoon, Housing Authority Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. I'd first like to thank the Executive Director and her team, Megan, Rebecca, Nicole, for the substantial efforts they undertook to get this item placed on the agenda today. We know it was a lot of work, so thank you very much. Sorry, my name is Jocelyn Lynn. I'm the Director of Housing Development for Burbank Housing. And thank you so much for the questions that you presented today, and I'm actually able to answer some of them during this public comment. So the first question you had was the applicable federal rate. The reason we're using that rate is because TCAC, the tax credit agency, has required us to do that for the soft loans that are going to be in this project. And the applicable federal rate is the rate that, some of you may already know, that the federal government sets to determine whether something's considered a loan or not. So it's usually something very small. Recently, it's been on the higher side, which is why we included the 3% floor. Another question I think one of you had was about temporary relocation. Yes, so these units are occupied, and so what we'll do is, once we get the close on the financing and have the money to start the rehab, we will do them in phases where residents of certain units at a time will temporarily relocate, and we'll house them in other temporary locations such as hotels. We oftentimes use hotels. Sometimes we'll use other units, vacant units on site that are not being rehabbed. And so we do a variety of methods, and we hire a relocation consultant to help us with that process. And I think another question you had, and I see I have another minute left, was, what would happen if this didn't go through? So the reason we're here before you today is because the way we've thin sliced it so many different ways, this was the only way actually to make the project financially feasible, was to ask for the forgiveness of the accrued interest. Our financial consultant initially factored that in, and the way it works is then you'd have to show that as part of the debt. And so and I don't quite know all the details of how it works, but it ended up creating a gap in our project. We weren't able to, we don't have any other financing sources to get that. And so actually by forgiving it, we were able to close that gap, and that's what that 3.5 million is about, and use that as leverage so that we can make this project pencil. And so going to the NOFA, we actually didn't apply under the NOFA for this because this was the solution for us to be able to make this project financially pencil. And instead, you know, Burbank Housing had other projects that we applied for in the NOFA. So hopefully by doing this, we can get all projects funded. Thank you.
You may speak. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Rich Wallach, also with Burbank Housing as Senior Director of Housing Finance and Business Development. I think Jocelyn covered most of the items, but is there an opportunity for a question and answer? If you have any more questions, okay. I think we covered all those. Thank you, Jocelyn.
Did you have more to say?
No, but be available if there are questions.
So,
You may go ahead.
thank you. My name is Steve Burke. I'm a member of the Burbank Housing Board, and before that, I had the great pleasure of being on the Housing Authority Board for over a decade. And before that, I was the Housing Authority and Redevelopment Executive Director for a long, long time. My kind of as background, Apple Valley Papago in the early 90s was a huge problem for the city. And the city, through the Housing Authority and all of the other departments of the city, put their full force and effort into trying to improve conditions in this neighborhood with the idea of having a model that could be replicated throughout the city of Santa Rosa and stabilize communities that were having problems like violence, terrible housing conditions, and just a whole host of problems that faced the residents of those neighborhoods that were really in a terrible situation. And so, I mean, we had every city department that worked together, had meetings once a week, including the police department. And over time, through code enforcement activities that were intense, we started to stabilize the conditions and improve the quality of life in Apple Valley Papago. Along with that, there was an opportunity that came my way, and that was that it was the Papago Corps Apartments, one of the largest of these properties, was in a position of being sold. The owner called me and said, "I'd like to sell," and who might we sell it to? And I said, "Well, that's really up to you. You know, it can be for-profits, non-profits. I can give you names." It turned out that I had a call from the executive director from Burbank at the time, who said, "Steve, would you like us to support the effort that you're engaged in?" And I said, "That would be great." And I think now Burbank owns probably about half of the units that are in the neighborhood. And it's really helped stabilize because of the management skills and the management property and the management maintenance has really been increased. I don't know what the future would hold if Burbank were to lose these units because of just the poor conditions over time. So that's in the way of background, and I really appreciate the work of your staff in supporting this because it is unusual. And many times in the past I've been opposed when I was sitting where you're sitting to forgiving loans, but there are extenuating circumstances that I think this makes this more sense. And so I would encourage you to approve it. Thank you.
My name is Gregory Farron. It's hugely satisfying to follow Steve Burke. The Housing Authority and Steve Burke, in the period he was talking about, really rescued this city. They really did a great job of trying to stabilize housing costs and to provide affordable housing where there wasn't. It was the Wild West, and we had no heroes to help us out. And you and Steve were our heroes. Now, you still are, but I want to tell you that there's a difference in perspective about interest from the nonprofit service deliverer and nonprofit housing developer. The interest, and I've been before you several times in the past to point out that the only way we can ever have rents that are low, and the only way we can build very low and extremely low income housing, is not to owe anybody any money that we have to pay back with the rents. We'd rather put the rents into rehabilitating the project. We'd rather put the rents into service to the clients. And so when you've had projects that have come due, and there have been some of them, and when you have projects like this one from Burbank, which through very clever and very appropriate use of their interest, bring more money into the county, bring it into the city, and help rehabilitate, you ought to be falling all over yourself to do it. Because the alternative is, as you've pointed out, to watch the thing deteriorate and be forced to raise rents. You have never been a bank like any other bank that says, we want to make money on our loans. You don't make money on your loans. Your loans have usually been forgiven. I've been before you at several times with other projects where we got to that point where we owed the interest, and we said to you, as I'll say to you right now, we're not collecting interest from our clients. We're not trying to build up interest to pay you, because we'd have to be charging a lot more for rent to do it. We'd rather have lower rents to stabilize our clients. We'd rather have low rents to be able to help keep our buildings maintained. The last thing we want to do, as Megan points out, is to give you back money. And so, yeah, $1 million on $100 million worth of assets, you're not a very good bank. You shouldn't be. You're not supposed to act like a bank. You're supposed to act like a housing authority. And you've been doing a great job of it, and I hope you continue to do it by supporting this project.
You may go ahead.
Okay, yes, my name is David Harris, and I served 8 years down there on your side of the dais, and Steve and I were on there at the same time. I have to say that in the 8 years I was on there, I did not learn that when a voucher holder goes into an affordable housing project, the voucher pays not the 30% of the residents' income. They still pay that. The housing voucher increases the cash flow for units. So that's something counterintuitive about vouchers. That vouchers that get used in affordable housing projects improve the cash flow and give them more residual to do the kind of things that Greg was talking about. So keep that in mind. That is because project-based vouchers have the big advantage of providing an assured way to get financing that doesn't rely on tax credit bonds. And but my understanding would be that now most of the vouchers are in use. But looking into the future of being able to use vouchers to build projects is advantageous. You'll get better cash flow on these projects if they're using project-based vouchers or vouchers that the residents bring with them. Thank you.
You may go ahead.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland in the Sonoma County Housing Advocacy Group, which was formed with the help of the former director of Burbank Housing Development named Arnold Sternberg. And I served an internship with him at Burbank while I was a student, preparing to get degrees in community development and housing. One of the important things for you folks is to not be given the bum's rush. I hope you know what that term means. People coming saying, we have to do it right now because of something, some extenuating circumstance that came up. I saw this a number of times over the years coming here, and frequently with Burbank being the people that say that has to happen. This is the type of thing, this is big amounts of money, where you should be given enough time that you have an adequate understanding of every aspect here, and then you can make a well-reasoned and well-informed decision. In today's presentation, it didn't say how much money has been given forward over the years on these projects. It just tells us these large amounts of millions that are still due, and how we would like to have this body give you waivers to these people on financial obligations. Have you ever tried to get a waiver on your financial obligation for rent with any landlord? Have you ever tried to get something worked out where you can have it be that you can get the adequate return on the investment as was previously agreed upon and was codified into covenants that have been written about? This situation is difficult because I'm a supporter of Burbank housing almost all the time. But this dilemma that we're facing here today is they're saying it has to be done or we all lose. And no one's explained that there are alternatives and there are ways to get this worked out to where the city doesn't lose any of the money. It's something that I think is very important. A housing authority needs to be responsive to not just the folks that come before it, but to the entire city's residents and taxpayers and all the folks that are involved in that sense. Years ago, it was decided not to have public housing in Santa Rosa by various staff members of the city because that wouldn't be a good idea. But essentially what we have is public housing, with Burbank being the managers of the public housing. And I don't mind that. Let's just get real about it and finance even more public housing. Thank you kindly.
All right, thank you all for that. So I don't see any other public comment on item 14.1. Is there any comments via Zoom or
No
anything?
Zoom
like that?
comments.
Okay. Okay, would any of the Housing Authority commissioners like to motion regarding the resolution for item 14.1?
I have a question before we make the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Downey has a question.
So, Megan, with the amount of money that in accrued interest, what's the, oh, I think my speaker's on. Is it safe to say I'm hearing that there would be more inventory if Burbank was allowed to rehab their inventory as opposed to not allow them to be forgiven this accrued interest and trying to take whatever money we can get back and apply it to other projects?
So this request before you today would not change the inventory. The number of units that are in existence would remain the same. This request and the forgiveness of interest would allow them to pursue the tax credits and bonds to rehabilitate those units. So it would allow the existing inventory to be rehabilitated and improved. So the residents of those units and future residents would have better living conditions. But there would be no change in the number of units that are available.
And what's the ratio of units that would be rehabilitated pertaining to those that would not be rehabilitated?
I believe they're planning on touching each of the units within the 5 projects. So more extensive work will occur in the Apple Valley projects, so in the Baby Apples, Papago, and Pauling Creek. But the Olive Grove units would also be rehabilitated. So all of the units would be touched in some fashion.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Smith?
I hope this is the first and last time we are put in this position at the last moment. I know you guys do a great job, and you know, I will do my part to move this forward. But let's remember it shouldn't happen again. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments from commissioners? All right, would any of the Housing Authority commissioners like to motion regarding resolution for item 14.1? Commissioner Smith.
I recommend that we back the consolidation of the loans so they can get their, what's that? What's that? I would like to motion to waive the reading of the text and to approve the Burbank Housing Development Corporation and Burbank Housing Neighborhood Revitalization Corporation's request for a conditional consolidation, extension, and modification of loans for 2862 and 2866 Apple Valley Lane, 2870 and 2874 Apple Valley Lane, Papago Court, Pauling Court, and Olive Grove Apartments.
Thank you for that. Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Friedman?
Aye.
Commissioner Owen?
I will reluctantly vote aye. I do have concerns of how much is being waived and how those funds could be used for future projects and future units.
Commissioner Downey? Commissioner Conti?
A trust-based aye.
And Chair Newton?
Aye.
Let the record show that the motion passes with 6 ayes.
And just as a point of clarification, if I could have Ethan, our counsel, just chime in, do we need, will that suffice on all 5 resolutions, or do we need to take them separately?
We do not have to take them separately, as long as the mover could just make clear that he is, that encompassed the adoption of the 5 resolutions.
Yeah, I think they were all mentioned in his reading of that motion. So just verify that that was your intent there, Commissioner Smith, to cover all 5 with that motion. He is nodding his head in agreement, so we'll call it good. Okay, that's it for today, and we will adjourn. Thank you.